I've received a lot of requests for the deck list that I was playing in the video where I played against Hyped, and while this list is really close to that one, this is the most updated version. This is what I'm playing in the ladder right now. As I film this, this is just before we get a vault, so it's starting tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a lot more experimentation, but this list is essentially what I've been playing from Iron all the way up through Silver, and it's Dawnspiders. And if you've been on the ladder, I'm sure you've run into it. It's relatively popular because it's pretty easy to build, and it's relatively easy to pilot. It's a very snowball-y list. If you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, this is very much like a token list where you're using Dawn Speakers in place of something like Divine Fervor. And one of the requests that I received on YouTube was to kind of go over each of the cards individually because people are new and they don't necessarily know what all the cards do. So that's what we're going to do to start the video, and then I'm going to include some games on it as well. Well, at least one game. It'll probably just be one game because I'm assuming this explanation is going to take a bit. So it'll probably be one game, but let's start right at the top. Ravenous Butcher. This is a 0 cost card for a 3/2 body, but in order to play this, you have to kill an ally. So the idea here is obviously that for free, you get a 3/2 body, but there's a drawback in that you have to kill an ally. Now, the good news is in this particular deck, this is not a drawback. This is actually a benefit, because what this deck wants to do is have one of your creatures die each turn. I mean, if more die, that's, I guess, fine, but your goal is to have one creature die each turn, and then that's going to like boost the rest of your bodies, to boost the rest of your board, and you'll kind of see that theme throughout. So this card is really a great card. It's an activator. This 3/2 body is oftentimes an upgrade over the 1/1s that you are choosing to destroy with it, and again, it's going to get you that single death that you need to turn on cards like Rasa, like Dawn Speakers, that we're going to see a little bit later. So just a 0 cost 3/2, but to kill it, or to play it, you have to kill an ally. Next up is Crawling Sensation. This is a 1 cost slow spell, but if an ally died this round, see, you're already running into the theme on card number 2. Summon 2 Spiderlings, and if you right click here, we can see Spiderlings are just 1/1 spiders. But this is a great way to flood the board. It's also a great way to give you even more bodies that you can freely sacrifice for other power-up effects. This is a great way to kind of get your board to go wide as you buff it with Dawn Speakers, and this is usually your best way for you to level up a Lease, who is the only champion that we're running in this list. So overall, great inclusion, part of the game plan. Next up is Fleet Feather Tracker. This is, in my opinion, just the best 1-drop in Demacia, which is kind of why you run it. The 2/1 body means that it trades pretty favorably, oftentimes into 2 drops, sometimes even 3 drops. And the fact that you can grant this challenger by playing another ally, and believe me, you play a lot of allies in this list, so that's pretty easy, makes it so that this is going to get you a lot of value. If this starts getting buffed up, then you can get even more value because you can use it as kind of targeted removal on a body. So again, cheap, so it fits your game plan, gives you control over the battlefield. Sometimes when you have bigger threats, you can also use this to take away their best blockers, so your big threats go through. Very common tactic with this card as well is because Elise, when she levels up, she becomes fearsome. I mean, she's fearsome already, but she becomes quite fearsome. It grants fearsome to all your spiders. So you can use this to take away the 3 power or higher blocker they might have and kind of make the rest of your team unblockable. So this is a great card for that. Next up is Hapless Aristocrat, and this is, in my opinion, just the best 1-drop in Shadow Isles. It's a simple 1/1 for 1, and on last breath, it summons a Spiderling. If you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, this card probably doesn't look very impressive. After all, there was a nearly identical card that existed in Legends, and it saw 0 play. But the primary difference here is that in this game, the blocker chooses targets when you're defending. So you choose how you block. That means that this 1/1 body can soak up like 5 damage. And that's a pretty significant difference. It's not going to get auto value traded into by a larger body. You can use this defensively. You can choose not to block. You can use this to trigger the last breath and also trigger a death for your team. This just gives you a lot of versatility, a lot of utility. And the fact that it makes a Spiderling is just icing on the cake because, again, the only champion that we run is Elise. Next up is Black Spear. This is a 2-cost card that deals 3 damage to an enemy unit if an ally died this round. So again, hitting that theme of we want something to die to kind of turn on all of our cards, and then you get a bunch of really powerful activations for usually a pretty cheap mana investment. So this is your primary removal tool. Next up we have Cursed Keeper. This is a 2-cost 1/1 that can't block, so that is the drawback. However, it has a last breath of Summon an Escaped Abomination, which is a 4/4. Now this is another tool that you are using to hopefully sacrifice and then turn on all of your death effects while turning the negative of losing a unit into a positive. So the idea for like a quality opening is if you play Cursed Keeper on turn 2 and then you hit it with a Ravenous Butcher, and maybe you passed turn 1 because you didn't have a 1-drop, but you've now banked a spell you've banked a spell mana, and now you can play Crawling Sensation, and so you kind of explode onto the board on turn 2, all because you've got this guy and an activator who's going to turn on the ability, blah, blah, blah. So that's, again, kind of the early game ideal start, what you're aiming for with a deck like this. Next up we have a Lease. This is a 2/3 fearsome unit. On attack, summons an attacking spiderling, and when she's at level 2, she's incredibly powerful because she not only has fearsome, but all spider allies have fearsome, and they all have challenger, and she gets challenger. So you kind of go back to playing the Elder Scrolls Legends or Hearthstone, where you now kind of pick the targets when you are attacking. So it's very powerful when it levels up. Pretty easy to level up at the start of any round, whether you're attacking or not. So just at the start of the round, if you have 3 other spiders, then you level her up. Next up we have Glimpse Beyond, and this is a powerhouse of a card. For this, we kill an ally to draw 2. Now, why is this powerful? Well, because you can put a creature out to block another creature, and then before combat resolves, play this on it. The other creature will still count as blocked, so you don't take any damage, but you also still draw the 2 cards, and you're also giving yourself a Death Trigger activation. So this is yet another way to pop those Cursed Keepers, your other last breath effects, while also refilling your hand. This is a major tool in the deck. Speaking of major tools, Vile Feast. There's a lot going on what seems like a really simple card. This is 2 mana to deal 1 damage to an enemy unit, summon a spiderling, but it's not just deal 1 damage, it's drain. So you ping for 1, you heal for 1, and you get a spiderling. Spiderling you can use to sacrifice to things, you can use it to level up a Lease. The fact that it's drain 1 means you're healing just a little bit, and believe me, there are games where that 1 health matters. Doing 1 damage to something means you can sometimes finish off a unit. This is a very versatile card in a pretty unassuming package, and you'll figure that out very quickly as you pile out the deck. Next up we have Dawnspeakers, and this is your big powerhouse play in the early game. And then in the late game, you're really hoping to land like Radiant Guardian or Arase, and we'll see them in a bit. So at the end of a round, you grant all other allies +1/+1 if an ally died this round. So we've seen a lot of cards that let our board go wide, and we've seen a lot of cards that let us kill some of our own units. So again, the ideal scenario is we use those cards to kill one of our units, but we play these cost-efficient things as a result, and then Dawnspeakers makes them all bigger. And that happens at the end of every round, again, whether you're attacking or not. So this really puts a thorn in the side of your opponent because it's very difficult to deal with. At 4 health, it's traditionally outside of most damage dealing removal. They're going to have to do something else, maybe something like Culling Blade, for example, or trade into it with challenger units. It is very powerful. It looks unassuming, but do not sleep on this card. It is like the engine of this deck. This is what makes this deck go really over the top. Next up we have Vanguard Redeemer. Again, when I'm summoned, draw a unit if an ally died this round. So again, just feeding on that if an ally died this round. This is a 3/3 for 3, but you get to draw a card. And the nice thing is this is when summoned, not when played. So that means that it can be triggered by the next card we're going to show, which is Chronicler of Ruin. So this on play says kill an ally, then revive it. So if you use this to target a Vanguard Redeemer, the Vanguard Redeemer will come back and always draw the card because that's on summoned. So if you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, in that game, whenever a unit entered the field of play, it always triggered its summon effects. In this game, they split the effect across 2 different keywords. Summoned units will always trigger whenever they enter play. However, cards that say play, like Rasa, who we're getting to a little bit later, this has to come from hand. If it says play, has to be played from hand. So Chronicler of Ruin turns on Redeemer. It's also, again, just a great way to kill your Cursed Keepers, activate your kill effects, etc., etc. So great engine for the deck. Back to back is a fantastic combat trick. It happens at burst speed, and you get to invest 5 mana for potentially 6 damage, or save 2 units in a crucial combat round. This is very versatile, it's very powerful. I would not be shocked if this gets adjusted at some point because it really just is that strong. I could see this easily being playable at 6. After all, it would be 6 for 6. I could also see this being changed to where the 2 units affected have to be adjacent to each other so that they have to physically be back to back. But as of right now, at 5 cost, this is very strong, and you are excited most of the time that you are playing it. Another thing to note is, even though it says 2 allies +3/+3, you can play this if you only have 1 ally if you really need that +3. Next up is Radiant Guardian. This is a 5 cost 5/5. When I'm summoned, you grant me Lifesteal and Tough if an ally died this round. When this triggers, it is a house in mirror matches and against other aggressive lists. The 5 toughness is already pretty rough to kill, but then when you add Tough on top of it, this thing becomes very, very annoying to get off the board, and the lifesteal means it's going to help you stabilize. This lets you win races. This card is very strong. Second to last, we have Arase the Sunderer, probably my favorite card in the game right now. Since the very first preview event, I felt like this thing was a bit overtuned. Yes, you can kind of play around it, but it plays head games with your opponent. The turns where you start to expect Rasa, you really start evaluating your own board state. What's the weakest units? What do I do if my opponent plays a Rasa? How do I not kill one of my opponent's units so that they can't activate Rasa? Because this thing is a 7/5 for 7 with Fearsome, which is an underrated keyword in my opinion. And on play, you kill the 2 weakest enemies if an ally died this round. Now, if you're asking what weakest means, you can right click on it and it will tell you. It starts by looking at the lowest powered units, and then with ties, you break them by lowest health and then lowest cost. So you know what units this is going to kill 90% of the time, probably even higher than 90% of the time when you're playing this card, and it can cause some blowout victories. This card is phenomenal. It's one of the reasons to play Shadow Isles, period. And then the last slot, this is a recent change, something I've been toying with. I know some people run Detain in this slot. I've been toying around with Vengeance simply because whenever I was detaining units, I was finding that then the unit I put Detain on was immediately getting destroyed and they would get their unit back, so I've just straight upgraded it to Vengeance. It is more expensive than Detain. This also will trigger Last Breath, where Detain technically does not. However, you don't have to worry about that troublesome unit, whatever it is you're targeting coming back. So this slot's fluctuating for me. This has been Detain, this has been Vengeance, this has been a second Radiant Guardian for me. This is the most fluctuating spot in the list, but right now it's a Vengeance. So this is the entire list. Hopefully by looking through the cards you kind of get an idea for what it's going to want to do. And as promised, now we're going to go play a game on the list so you can see it in action. We're going to jump on the ranked ladder. Alright, so we are jumping into a game here on the ladder, and looks like we're going to be up against Freljord Shadow Isles Control. And we are attacking on the odds. So that means we're attacking on round 1, 3, 5. And that's relevant because you kind of need to pay attention to certain turns for power spikes.
No.
Alright, we'll just go ahead and end there. That's really unfortunate. We pretty desperately wanted to develop a Lease this round. Maybe we can entice them. If we do this, they might take the Challenger on our 3-2. I said might. So I guess instead we're going to be Vile Feasting it twice, essentially. Which again is mostly a bummer because that means no Elise development. It's interesting. We could develop Elise potentially. If we just attack with the two of them, they will likely trade with the Butcher, which will trigger a death, which will allow us to play Crawling Sensation and Elise, and then after the round ends, she levels up. So we're actually going to take that gamble here. And if they don't assign blocks or they have a combat trick, we've got the Vile Feast as a combat trick. Wow, they let that go. How interesting. Alright, well we're, again, going to just wait to develop our Release. We don't want to do it into a Stalking Wolf. Alright, so now we'll develop the Elise. We do this first before the Sensation because you kind of fear Avalanche. It's entirely possible they still do the Avalanche. Instead, they hit us with Grasp of the Undying. Alright. They like having all of the answers they need. It's like they're playing a control deck or something. Who'd have thunk it? Well, the downside is we've found no Dawnspeakers, and still no Dawnspeakers. And they're still at 19 health. So, unfortunately, we're likely going to lose the 3-2 here, but we really need to get these Challenger units off the board because they are impacting our ability to develop.
I fight for the fallen.
Now that might have been a dry pass, hoping that we'd play something that they could Avalanche, but nope, they've just got an Avarosan that they also had buffed with the Hawk. So rather fortuitous top deck on their part.
Today we fight as one.
Chump block with the hair so we don't take 6, but it also gives us the death to activate for the Redeemer.
The tide of war.
Alright, a lot of different ways that we could go this round, but we're going to start by just trying to nuke one of these and draw and kind of see what they do as well. Because with the spell mana here, they do have enough potentially for like a Ruination, and so we don't want to overcommit.
Here in your time of need.
Alright, so that's an Anivia. And we're gonna answer that with Arase.
Before us, the living
and this is why Arase is so powerful. They went from pretty solid board state to just the egg that they really don't want to give up. And only the 3 spell mana here, so Might be frostbiting something. Or just taking the surrender. So, there you have it. That's the deck list. We didn't get to see Dawnspiders in action. I might film some more with this deck a little bit later so you can kind of see that, but yeah, sorry. I'm filming this really late at night, and I have some coffee in me, but I swear I am not slurring my words because I'm having a stroke or anything. Thank you if you were concerned about my health. I'm just really tired. But it's because it's a really busy season for me at work right now, on top of being very, very busy with all this Legends of Runeterra goodness. I'm also really enjoying Temtem right now, and I just need to clone myself. So, anyway, that's the game. You got to see the power of Rasa, and that's the really important thing in my mind. You also get to see how annoying Radiant Angel can potentially be. And while we didn't get the actual Dawnspiders out, hopefully, because of the walkthrough earlier, you kind of understand what the list is trying to do. And this next week, I'm going to be trying new lists because we're going to have a vault and I'm going to craft some more stuff. I've got a few things kind of already pre-built. So as long as I unlock enough stuff to play them, we'll kind of diversify the decks on the channel. If you made it this far, thank you for watching the video. Thank you for putting up with my slurred words and my incoherent rambling. And hopefully you will stick around, subscribe, watch more videos, and remember, when you're playing, have fun.